Well, friends, we're going to read again, this time in the passage, considering together, Colossians chapter 3. And I'm going to begin tonight looking at verses 5 through 10. Don't expect to finish it, but just to preserve the context a little, we'll go back to verse 1. So, the Epistle of Paul to the Colossians and chapter 3, reading from verse 1. If ye then be risen with Christ, seek those things which are above, where Christ sitteth on the right hand of God. Set your affection on things above, not on things on the earth. For you are dead, and your life is hid with Christ in God. When Christ, who is our life, shall appear, then shall you also appear with him in glory. Mortify therefore your members which are upon the earth, fornication, uncleanness, inordinate affection, evil concupiscence, and covetousness, which is idolatry. For which things' sake the wrath of God cometh on the children of disobedience, in the which you also walked sometime when you lived in them. But now you also put off all these: anger, wrath, malice, blasphemy, filthy communication out of your mouth. Lie not one to another, seeing you have put off the old man with his deeds, and have put on the new man, which is renewed in knowledge, after the image of him that created him. In the first 4 verses, we've seen the apostle urging these believers in Colossae, and us too, of course, to be doing, first of all, 2 things: to be seeking and setting. And we saw that in verse 1 and 2. Seeking the things that are above and setting our affections on these things. Then last time in verses 3 and 4, he tells us why. They are to be seeking and to be setting because of what had already happened in their lives, because they had been brought to new spiritual life through Christ, and also because of what would yet happen in their lives. And you'll find that in verse 4, when Christ, who is our life, shall appear, then shall you also appear with him in glory. So they were to be seeking and setting because of things that had already happened, and because of things which had not yet, but which they most surely would. Now, it's very clear that verse 5 follows on from that. You notice that second word, therefore, that's sending us back. Paul is saying, in light of what I've already said, mortify your members which are upon the earth. And the section that he's beginning there in verse 5, it runs on, and depends how you divide it up, but it runs on till verses 9 or 10. And I intend to look at these verses over probably 2 weeks, certainly more than 1. Well, as we begin to consider it tonight, there are 3 particular areas I want to delve into, and I'll spend most of my time on the third. But I want us to begin by asking, first of all, what Paul was telling them to do. What is Paul telling them? What is the Lord telling us to do? Mortify, therefore, your members which are upon the earth. Now we have to understand 2 words there. We have to understand, first of all, what mortify means, and then we have to work out what he means by members that are upon the earth. So there are 2 things that we have to clarify. Now, the word mortify at the beginning, some have interpreted the word that's there as subdue. Subdue your members which are upon the earth. And you know what it means when you subdue something. You settle it down, you decrease its power and its influence in your life. And there is an element of that, there is an element rather of truth in that right enough, that the believer is to subdue. In this case, it's going to be sinful tendencies. That is certainly true. The problem with translating it as subdue is that it doesn't go far enough, as we'll see in a minute. But certainly we are to subdue sinful tendencies. We are to discourage them rather than to encourage them. We are to be disabling rather than enabling. So there is an element of truth in saying that we are to subdue it. But when we come back to the Greek, we discover that the word that's used there is far stronger than subdue. It actually means, and that's what the word mortify means as well, it means to kill, to slay. Slay, kill therefore your members which are upon the earth. So in verses 1 to 4, we've had positive instruction. You're seeking and you're setting, both positive things. Here now we have a more negative one. We are killing or slaying, if we want to stick with the S letter. We are slaying. And both, and I'll say more about this before I finish, both are necessary. We need the positive instruction, but we also need the negative warning as well. So that's the first thing. Now, what is Paul telling them to do? He's telling them to kill, to put to death their members which are upon the earth. So what are those members that are upon the earth? What does that mean? Well, without dragging it out any more than I need to, it can be summarized like this. It's the corrupt desires of our heart. The corrupt desires that rise up out of our own heart. Sinful thoughts that lead, of course, to sinful action. That express themselves sometimes in words and sometimes in action. And sometimes they never express themselves outwardly at all. They just remain enclosed, as it were, in our mind and in our heart. We are to put these things to death. That's what it means. Mortify, therefore, your members which are upon the earth. And we know very well that the problem is in the heart. You remember the way the Lord addressed that directly in his own day. The Pharisee group were obsessed with outward observance. The washing of cups, the washing of plates, this, that, and the next thing. And Jesus says, your focus is all wrong. You're utterly obsessed with the outward, and you're completely forgetting the inward. You're forgetting that it's out of the heart of man that sin comes, and that is the root of our problem. And that's true even for the believer. Now, of course, if you've been converted, you've been saved, if the Lord has come into your life, your relationship to sin has changed. The Bible is very, very clear on that. It no longer has dominion over the believer. Romans 6, verse 14. But although it doesn't have dominion, it still lurks in the heart. I came across a phrase recently, I have no idea now where it was, but it was quite a helpful phrase. Sin retains a foothold. And it does. It retains a foothold. And every Christian knows that very well, that there's something inside us that does not want to lie down and die. Maybe you thought when you were converted, that's it, I'll never sin again. And it was the best of intentions, and you meant it genuinely. But as you go on in the Christian life, you discover very much otherwise. You're with Paul in Romans 7. O wretched man that I am. The good that I would, I do not. The evil that I would not, that I do. Who shall deliver me from the body of this death? Sanctification is progressive. It works slowly. Sin no longer has total control, but it does retain, as I said, a foothold. We came across an illustration of this recently, and I've actually tried to adapt it. I didn't particularly like the original illustration, but I've adapted it a little, and it may be helpful. It's been compared. You imagine just now somebody who has a business, a big business, a factory, a company of some sort, employing lots of people. And unfortunately, that business is badly run. The person at the top is deeply corrupt, doesn't care for his staff, and is involved in all sorts of dubious practices. There's a lot of shady dealings, if you like, going on in the company. And there's disorder in the company. There's indiscipline in the staff, and that disorder is tolerated and it's encouraged, and the whole thing is a shambles. But eventually, somebody else takes over that company, and the new owner is a very different sort of person. The new owner is a good person. But although the new owner is a good person, the company is not going to change overnight. The change will happen, and it will begin on day one, but it won't be finished on day one. It will be very gradual. And it will be gradual because there'll be lots of people in that company down through the chain, if you like, who were used to the way things used to be run there. And some of them would have liked that. Maybe they liked the corruption. Maybe they were getting backhanders, as we say. Maybe they were doing very well out of the corruption of the old business. They liked the old owner's ways. They liked the lax attitude. They were fond of the bad habits. It's going to take time. It's going to take time either to change these people, or if all else fails, to weed them out. The company, the change has begun. It's not going to happen on day one. And you might have good people in that company, and they'll say, after a few days, they'll say, oh, well, we thought the new owner was going to sort this out. But, there's still things going on. And we might say to them, I have to be patient. You have to be patient. And in a measure that is true as well for the believer. We have to be patient. Now, I'm not encouraging apathy or anything like that. You know very well I'm not. There is that side to it as well. We can become complacent. I'm not encouraging complacency, but I am remembering and reminding you that sanctification is progressive. No wonder David prays in Psalm 51, create a clean heart, Lord, renew a right spirit within me. Wasn't David on day one of his spiritual journey? Of course it was. What is Paul telling them to do? Tell them to kill the evil, sinful desires that rise up in their heart. Mortify therefore your members which are on earth. And what does Paul do then? Well, he then gives us a sample of some particular sins. In fact, he gives us two samples. He gives us the first one in verse 5 and the second in verses 8 and 9. Now, these two samples have been divided, described in different ways. I've seen a number of different descriptions, some maybe more convincing than others. There is one that is quite helpful. It might be William Hendrickson, it doesn't matter. Who describes verse 5 as sensual sins. And then the second list as social sins. And I think we'll see as we come along beside them that does capture it very well. So we have the first list, and I'm not going to spend any time on it, and just look very quickly at it. We have this list of what we call sensual sins. First of all, in verse 5, fornication. Well, that is sexual immorality. He follows that up with, where am I? Uncleanness. Now, that's more concerned with thinking. What's in our minds and what rises up in our minds. It's less physical, more emotional, more in the mind. So we are not to encourage these things. We are not to give them room to grow. We are to be putting them to death even as they rise up. Mortify therefore your members which are upon the earth, fornication, uncleanness. Then we have these next two, inordinate affection and evil concupiscence. Now, it's not easy to distinguish between these two. New Testament scholars struggle to distinguish, but evil concupiscence is base evil desire. It's all part and parcel of the one, really. It's the various workings and describings of what you might call carnal desire that he's speaking of here. Both internal, that never escapes out of our own being, and external, as that would find expression. And why does Paul speak so much about that in verse 5? There's 101 different sins, and yet he uses 4 different words or phrases to describe something that's very close to one another. Well, probably because no doubt these folk in Colossae had been converted from a pagan background. They hadn't grown up as Paul had with the Old Testament and with the moral compass that came with that. These folk were converted from a pagan background. They had no idea about right and wrong, other than what their conscience witnessed to them. They would have grown up with these practices all around them. And they would have been very common and would have been regarded, in fact, as perfectly normal. Their understanding of these things might well have been very different to our understanding. It was just the society they were in. Colossae was a very decadent place. It was full of moral disorder. That's the sort of place it was. And that's the sort of lives they would have lived. That's why Paul is speaking so much about it. That's why he takes 4 words, 4 phrases to nail this down. He said, I know this is what happened. I know this is what happens still. I know that's the climate. But you must put these things to death if you find them creeping up within yourself. We're back in such a climate now, I suppose, as well. Mortify. Put them to death. Because it's obvious that if desires are encouraged, it will lead to deeds. And if appetites are fed, it will lead to action. You remember the antidote that Paul gives us in Philippians 4:8. Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things. And that's the antidote, really, to what we have here. Mortify therefore your members which are upon the earth, and we have this list of 4. And then, at the very end of the verse, we have this one coming in. And covetousness, which is idolatry. Where did that come from? We do not expect that to be the next thing. We've had 4 that are very close to one another, and suddenly we have covetousness, and it seems to be a mile away from the others. Well, it's not a mile away from them at all. What is the sin of covetousness? What often lies at the root of some of these sins I was talking about a moment ago? It's wanting more than is right. It's wanting something else that you shouldn't be wanting. And isn't that precisely what covetousness is? Covetousness is the sin of never being satisfied with what we have. And often, and this is its twin brother, often being envious of others who do have whatever it might be that we want, be that something physical or whatever. So he gives us a list and covetousness. But he adds after covetousness, which is idolatry. And how is covetousness idolatry? Because it puts other things in the place of God. That's how. It puts other things in the place of God. It's a giving of your time, of your energy, of your love, and of your regard to worldly things, whatever they might be, perhaps things that in themselves are perfectly legitimate, but you're giving them what you should give to God. You shall have no other gods before me, and you shall not covet. And the two are closely linked, one with the other. The command of covetousness is the last of the 10, but through it we often break all the other. The covetous person has another god before the Lord. He's broken one of the early commandments. The covetous person may dishonor God. The covetous person may be even ready to steal to get what they want. In an extreme example, breaking other commandments in the process of breaking this. It's what's described elsewhere in the Bible as the love of the world. It's too great a love for what is physical, for what is pleasant, too eager a pursuit after these things. Live loosely to the word, in it, but not too closely tied to it. Matthew Henry puts it like this: covetousness is having an unchristian anxiety about losing things, and an unchristian sorrow if we do. An unchristian anxiety, sorry, I misquoted him, of losing or not getting things, and an unchristian sorrow if we do lose them or don't get them. It is a putting of something else in the place of God. It is a wanting what God has not given. That is how it's idolatry. And I read recently, covetousness, we would probably mark it down as a very low grade sin. I think that's fair comment, isn't it? If you felt convicted of covetousness, you would say, well, it's a sin. Obviously it's a sin, but it's not that bad. But I read recently, covetousness is more dishonoring to God than is generally thought. And I think the more you think about it, the more you realize that is the case. So we have these sensual sins in verse 5. Then we have social sins in verses 8 and 9. I'm going to have to leave them until the next time. We'll say more about them then. But finally tonight, why is it so important that we mortify our members which are upon the earth? Why does it matter? Well, can I give you 3 reasons? First of all, in verse 6 we're told that they bring divine displeasure. Why should you do it? Because God is not pleased when we do. Verse 6, for which things sake the wrath of God cometh on the children of disobedience. God is not neutral about these things. He is not apathetic. And the Christian, surely, if anything is true, they want to do what pleases God. That surely is Christ-likeness. Psalm 40, to do thy will I take delight, O thou my God that art. That's the voice of Christ, but it's also the voice of God. That's the first reason, because not doing it brings divine displeasure. The second reason you'll find in verse 7 and verse 9. Don't do it because it belongs to the old life. Verse 7, in which you also walked sometime when you lived in them. Verse 9, but now you have put off the old man with his deeds. It's how you were, it's not how you are any longer. Now there's an interesting phrase that's used there. For which things' sake the wrath of God cometh on the, notice this, the children of disobedience. He's talking here about men and women who are not yet converted. And he describes them as the children of disobedience. Now, notice what he's saying. He's not saying disobedient children. He's saying the children of disobedience. And that's different to a disobedient child. Children of disobedience. It's a Jewish way of expressing things. It means under the power of sin, naturally prone to disobey. That's our natural default setting, is to disobey, to sin. We were singing about it in Psalm 58, estranged even from the very womb. They go astray as soon as to the word they come. And as it says in Ephesians 2, if we're children of disobedience, we're also children of wrath. The Christian is not a child of disobedience. They're a disobedient child. And there's a word of difference. You were once a child of disobedience. You're no longer that. Don't be like them. You're now a child. But don't be a disobedient child. Because you want to please your Heavenly Father. And we're back to the previous point. It's taken us full circle. Why is it important? Because sin brings God's displeasure. Because it belongs to the old life. And thirdly, if you don't kill them, in a sense, and I'm going to have to qualify this, I know, but in a sense, they will kill you. When we're thinking of sin, we've got to remember that, to quote somebody else, something dangerous is on the loose. Satan is like a roaring lion going about seeking whom he may devour. If you don't kill them, in a sense, they will kill you. Now, I'm not saying, of course, that the believer can be lost. Once saved, always saved, absolutely. But if we tolerate sin, much damage will be sustained. It can kill things. It can kill your peace. Not permanently, but certainly temporarily. It can kill your joy. It can kill your fellowship. It can kill your progress. It can kill your profession. It can kill fellowship. And I think I said that already. There is much that sin kills. Do not let sin kill sin. Mortify, therefore, your members. Now, only the Christian can do that. The natural man has no power over sin. The natural man may manage to subdue it. And we were talking about that at the beginning. People can subdue sin. Of course they can. We're foolish to deny that. But only the believer is empowered by the Spirit to truly put it to death. It requires greater power than we ourselves have. It requires the power of God. It is God that worketh in you, both to will and to do of his good pleasure. And one day, and it might not feel like it today, But one day it will be dead. Sin will be no more. It will be mortified. And we are to cooperate, if I can put it as that, in this process of mortification. So, Paul is telling us to be seeking, to be setting, and to be slaying. We need the encouragements of verses 3 and 4, but we also need the stronger warnings of verses 5 to 10. So, seeking, setting, slaying. The negative as necessary as the opposite. Can I give you an illustration? I'm just going to give you. No amount of good exercise or good diet will replace the need for heart surgery. They tell you in Raigmore you're going to need some stents, so you're going to need some surgery here. And you say, well, I'll go home and I'll cut down on certain things and I'll start walking. Both of them good. But they will not replace the need for you to have surgery. Both are necessary. But no amount of exercise will replace the need for the surgery. And in the same way, we need to be pulling up as well as plant. Or if I can change the illustration, no amount of planting flowers will replace the need for weeding. It won't replace the need for weeding. You'll still have to do the weeding. Plant the flowers by all means. You'll still have to do weeding. Sin needs to be removed. The weeds of sin need to be plucked up. And if you've got a garden and you're trying to get rid of weeds, it's astonishing how resistant they are. You think you've got that. You think you got it by the roots. And up it comes again. And isn't it the same with sin? You think you had it by the roots. You repented of it. And you said, never ever again. And suddenly, there it is. It wasn't quite as dead as you thought. And sometimes the Lord allows that to save us from a smug self-satisfaction and pride. Patting ourselves on the back and saying, am I doing well? Have you ever noticed? No sooner have you had that thought than the Lord will humble you. Tell them, I'm going to go back, I'm going to finish with Matthew. Tell them, says Matthew Henry, as you would kill weeds or vermin. That's quite an interesting illustration. As you would kill weeds or vermin, which spread and destroy all about them. Kill them as an enemy who would kill you, given a chance. Well, we've dealt with that. Next time, please turn passage review. We trust the Lord, bless his word.